What's up, everybody? Little JCS Interactive on Tom Lang's birthday.
Oh, here we go.
Happy birthday, Tom Lang.
I feel like you might have promoted both of our birthdays this year equally. Thank you very much.
Well, I usually jokingly promote my birthday, but not because I'm actually serious. But yeah, I don't know. If any birthday after 40, I don't think I promote anymore. So this is it for you. You got a few years left. That's it. And then we're done promoting birthdays.
They all feel about the same once you get past the early 30s.
That's true. That's
the
true.
20s are all cool, man. It's like you check off boxes about getting out of, being 21, first of all.
Yeah.
Getting out of college, being able to rent a car. Remember, that's a thing at 25.
Oh, yeah.
Your friends graduating law school or PhDs or whatever, but then
you start getting married and then,
about 28, 29, and you're like, oh, it's 30. That'll be one final thing. And then it all is kind of the same. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. I was just, before we came on the air here, and by the way, if you guys have any questions, anything to observe, anything to say, anything you want answered, make sure you put it in the chat there and we'll get to it. We'll be with you for about an hour here and hang out a little bit. And then actually from here, Tom, I get to go do the Warchant report. So that'll be fun. I got a good little block here of Florida State material.
What are you breaking down? I know there's usually categories. Do you have something that you're focusing on?
No. I'm sure I was assigned something, but I'm going to double check it before we actually record. I actually was doing my Wake Forest stuff this morning anyhow, so I wasn't as worried about specifics because I was looking at the team as a whole.
It feels like a carbon copy in some ways of Virginia Tech and Syracuse, right? It's their offense. Our defense should dominate, and then from there the game moves on. That kind of a thing.
Yeah, they've got a lot of negative stats surrounding their. They have a 92%. They're 92nd in the country in success rate on offense. If you just want to catch all stat, let's say, instead of just rushing, passing, all these different. Just looking at their offense, it's 92nd.
Yeah.
That ain't real good, man.
No, that'll hurt your feeling. There's a lot of negative plays.
Yeah,
a lot of negative plays.
And when you do flesh it out, you find out there are a lot of negative plays for Wake. Doesn't mean they won't play their best game of the year. It doesn't mean that if you don't go in there and if you go in there and don't take care of business and aren't focused, that you can't be in a game. We've seen, I don't like to unnecessarily scare people, but in places that are sort of atmosphereless. There's nothing really to it.
Yeah.
You can get guys going through the motion sometimes. Next thing you look up and it's a 7-point game, and who knows? But I don't. As long as they don't let anything get weird and avalanche, they should be fine. This is about execution, and good teams do this. This is what good teams do. They go and they win nondescript games that, when you're watching highlights that night. And they go through the top 25. They spend 30 seconds on your game. Here's Jordan Travis to Keon Coleman. It's a touchdown. That put the Noles up 21-7. Later on, they tack on 2 more scores. Florida State remains undefeated. Number 4 in the country wins today, 38-7, or something, something like that.
Yeah, you could see it going that way for sure. Again, this is not like a monumental number. Back in the day, 2013 and even 2014, before Vegas figured out that we didn't care very much and we were complacent. A number for a team like Wake with a success rate on offense in the 90s would be 28.5, 31.5. It's only 20.5. It's actually in between the number that you saw for Virginia Tech and Syracuse, because their defense can cause issues if you're not buttoned up and if you don't care to show up there and do your job. And I think that's the preliminary part for the test. Where is Florida State going to be tested? Where could it learn about itself? Well, Wake Forest is going to air it out, and their defense can do a little bit of damage on early downs themselves.
Yeah, well, their defense is the top 50 defense, and I think you could argue. And then I think that's a lot different than obviously the success rate they're having on offense, and which isn't great. And then I think the other thing is that number speaks to Florida State doesn't run a lot of plays. Florida State has not run a ton of plays, so we're not playing this crazy breakneck tempo in which you could really extend the number. So I think they see Wake's defense being decent at home, quiet nooner. And Florida State not running a ton of plays, you could see where the score just doesn't get out of hand.
Yeah, agreed. I know that Herb Street had circled us to be on upset alert. I think that's the Wake Forest reputation of old. But would it be altogether shocking if this was, 17-7 at half, or something along those lines, where maybe the world says, "Oh, I should tune in for Florida State and Wake because something's going on in Winston-Salem." I wouldn't be terribly stunned if it was a 2-score spread at halftime, but I don't know that's tantamount to upset alert the way that Wake has done to us way too many times in the past.
Really frustrating if we're sitting there in a game in the second half. No, you're right. I wouldn't be completely stunned and flabbergasted the fact that it was a 2-score game in the second half, but I would be stunned if we were in one of these games that you and I described today on the JCS where we're,
Oh,
you know, oh, really? Everything that can go wrong is going wrong. And we've got guys dropping passes and fumbling balls on deep drives into the opponent's 20 inside in the red zone, and then also you got a missed kick in there and then a bad punt and something weird where you're going, okay, we're doing everything in our bag of tricks to make this reasonably close. I mean, like, I would be surprised if that happened.
yeah, agreed. Jackson wants to know, why does it feel like our best running back, this is his opinion, and that's in terms of talent, Trey Benson, is the worst one in this offense? I feel like he would be better in a pro-style offense.
Might be a guy that just needs to be like you almost picture him as an old school I formation, turn, hand the ball, hit the hole, let's go. He's got such top end speed. He's so big and strong, and people bounce off of him. If we ran power a ton and he was the guy that was a feature back getting 23 carries between the tackles and it was all just turn and go, yeah, it might be better suited for him.
It would require him to get downhill with speed, though. And look, he's tentative, and sometimes it works because you're setting things up. Don't get me wrong. That's not always a bad thing to be tentative. One of the better running backs in the last 15, 20 years in the NFL was extremely patient in Le'Veon Bell. That dude just waited and waited.
Yeah, that's a weird style, yeah.
He'd put his foot in the ground and he'd go. So you can do it multiple ways. But I don't know, a pro-style offense, he would have to be more of a battering ram. And I don't know that you would describe him at any point in his career. There are moments where he decides that he's going to be downhill, but he's not a battering ram type player, even though his body type would suggest that. Is that probably fair?
Yeah, but we don't ask him to do it. So you wonder what it would look like. Because if we did ask him to do it and said that's how we're going to play the game, I think he may do all right with that. I mean, it's certainly something to explore. It's a fun little exercise. I don't know. It might be interesting. Oh, look at that. Melissa's here. Headed to Wake for the revenge tour stop. Hope it's a, hey, remember us, pads popping kind of game. Me too. Bring on the fake punts, onside kicks, double reverses. Heck, line up LHS and QB with a triple option. I am excited about the possibility that we hang a number here. I don't know that they will, but we're getting into the time of year where Mike will understand that this starts to become a beauty contest to some extent. And I understand you want to get a lot of people in, but there's an opportunity here to maybe really put a beat down on Wake. And, it gets easier and easier from a narrative standpoint for people to say, look, Florida State won in blowout fashion yet again. You start stockpiling blowout wins, it starts to bode well.
Well, and to that point about pads popping, and even Jackson's point, you look at the fourth quarter and the way we closed out that game against Duke. You notice a lot of those runs, and I get Rodney's in for quite a few of those. They're downhill. We're getting downhill. That is exactly how you want to play Wake. It's how you want to play their front. So I wonder if maybe some of the game plan that we see in the first half, it mirrors what we saw in the fourth quarter against Duke. The thing I'd say, and I feel you when you're talking about a number might be coming, it just seems like all of the elements of the offense are starting to blend together rather than it being feast or famine, deep ball or nothing. It feels like there's levels to this whole thing, and it might start to be lining up very nicely for a good push here in the final 5 games.
Yeah, well, I think almost by force, they've been told that they're not going to be able to do the stuff they fell in love with early on. And so what that's forced Jordan and Mike and the rest of the team to do is to be patient and understand that, there are a lot of other facets to this offense that we can run, a lot of other guys that can contribute, and you can spread it around, really access every part of the field. And eventually big plays will happen because you'll force them out of that too deep shell. But a lot of teams have really done that. And I would do it too. I think that's the right plan playing Florida State, is to force them to be patient and try to hope you can force a turnover. Early on Duke did. They got the pick 6. And so they were playing the game they wanted to play.
You could
And
think about it. It's almost like they got 3 turnovers. The turnover on downs is a thing. It's a choice you make. It's not as egregious as a fumble or an interception,
and they
but
still have to make the stop too. So
but
yeah,
but it feels as though it's a turnover given that the field position was pretty good for the first one and it's really, really good for the second one. It's a sudden change in a sense.
yeah.
So you get 3 turnovers, if you want to categorize it that way, one of which is directly for a touchdown. And you score 10 points total off of those turns. Actually, I believe they scored their first touchdown off of the first 4th down stop, right? That was when they scored their
Yeah, we were
ball run.
driving. We drove way down there. Then they got the ball after the stop, and then they ran the ball.
Yeah. So, I mean, in theory, most of their points were off of turnover-like situations, sudden change situations.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I would say is that I'm interested to watch, if we're just looking at it from Florida State's defensive standpoint, Adam had a really good opportunity this week to kind of talk about, hey, guys, when we do what we intended to do, which is to clog the middle because we know they want to run the ball between the tackles and be physical, and we force it outside, which is, the spilling things, and we watch that happen all the time with defenses. We spill it out there for a reason. Guys got to be home. Guys got to set the edge, and guys got to be ready to make a tackle. They can't take absurdly bad angles or have a tackle broken or get out run to the corner. Like, you can't do that kind of stuff, or else you find yourself in a ball game that doesn't have to be a ball game.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the hidden plays of the game. We don't talk about it as much as, the kick return or maybe the 4th down stop in the second half. But the 1st and goal late in the second quarter is a great example of what is correct. Doing your job correctly if you have contain on the outside. Akeem Dent is up there to make the play. I think Jerrion Jones rallies to make some that play as well. But it's 1st and goal. They're moving the ball meticulously down the field. And that forces them in a second and goal from a medium distance. And then that's when they get the holding penalty and they essentially capitulate and they say, we're just going to play for 3. But all the momentum is on their side at that point, and you hadn't contained very well. You hadn't set the edge very well, and you do on that play, and it changes the course of a drive. So to your point, yeah, I would think that there's some good tape to say, this is what not to do, Kalen DeLoach. This is what not to do, Tatum Bethune. And then good job, Akeem Dent. Tony wants to know about the starting offensive line and what's the 5 best, do you think?
He went, what does that say? Oh, it's just the 5 best? Okay, so
he's naming 4, and so he's leaving the right guard slot open.
Well, I think you're going to have to probably keep Meach in there at right guard. Sub in and out at right guard, but left guard I think needs to be Darius Washington at this point. And I would go if you can get a healthy Robert Scott, it'd be nice. It's a big giant if at left tackle and Bless at right. But if Robert's not going to be healthy, then I think Washington ends up at one of the tackles and you go from there. It's maddening, man. I'm a little frustrated, and it's a work in progress, and we're 8 games in. So
yeah, Darius has turned out to be, I think, the most important offensive lineman this year. I would have thought Maurice Smith was because he had no backup at center, but now Darius is your backup at center, and he can play tackle for you if you need it. He can play guard for you if you need him to. So
proud of that young man. He's taken a huge leap forward. You and I talked to Atkins before the season in a one-on-one interview I did with him, and we had him on, and you were producing. And Alex talked about you never know which guys are going to take that big leap in the offseason. It's usually the guy you don't expect. Well, there you go. He really has taken the biggest leap of anybody. I mean, that guy, you can, like you said, you can play him anywhere along the offensive line, and he's a plus player.
Yeah.
He's not just adequate. He's a plus player no matter where you put him.
Yeah, the hard part with that group right there that you have on the screen is Robert's hardly ever healthy. Bless hasn't been healthy. He just came back last week for his first game in a while, and he was pulled. I don't think that was because he tweaked something. I think he was pulled because of performance. So he's not back up to speed. Darius, do you really want to play him and risk that he and Mo are playing next to each other and one of them goes down, then you don't have a backup? Like, it's for having 8 guys, you have a lot of issues.
You do have a lot of issues. It'll be the undoing of the team when they lose. They'll lose because of that.
And hey,
no, when they eventually lose, I don't think they're going to win the national championship. I'm not saying they couldn't, but I think when they lose, whenever that is, I think we'll rue the day we thought this offensive line was going to be better, or that it didn't live up to what we thought it could live up to.
So, Michael, this is philosophy time. The long game, rotating guys in so that you can finish strong in the fourth quarter is one approach, clearly the one that we're taking on offense and defense. Michael says, why can't we just run Jordan in the first half, score between 31 and 35 points, and sit him in the second half?
You could if you feel like that's something that you can accomplish right off the bat, get him out there and dominate, and then maybe you let your backups play the rest of the way. They haven't done that. I think they've really tried to avoid running Jordan at all costs unless it's a big game or a team is equipped to shut down the traditional running game. I would argue that plenty of teams that are, if you're plus along the defensive line, I think you kind of stop our run game unless Jordan's running.
The thing about Jordan running is that he is so good at not taking a direct hit these days. Like, it started at the end of last year. You notice he was getting better and better at that. The Florida game, obviously that's why the ball got spotted at the half-yard line a couple of times, was he was dodging, not necessarily sliding. But getting out of harm's way, you even saw that a little bit in the spring. While they're not live, you could see him working on that part of his game. It's not as risky as running him 2 years ago when he had nothing else, and it was him and Jayshon Corbin and Trayshawn Ward. So I hear you, Michael, is what I'm saying. But I think what they're saying is the juice is not worth the squeeze since they have so many other playmakers. Grill Master, how well do you expect the offensive line to perform against Wake? Run blocking is a concern. He wants to see it more buttoned up.
I think it'll be okay. I think we'll have our moments. I'm sure we'll spring a big play or two. And I think we'll be angry on a couple of drives where we go, well, that was useless. 2nd and 10, followed by 3rd and 7, followed by incomplete, followed by punt. I could see that very well being the case because that's kind of who we've been. Luckily, we are an efficient offense in spite of the fact that we struggle in certain aspects of offense, if that makes any sense to you. I kind of think that's who we are right now. We're a good football team. Very good football team, but obviously we have some holes, and that appears to be one of them. I think that's the whole thing with us. I think that I think that when you're aspiring to win a national championship or you're excited about maybe going to the college football playoff, you tend to focus on the areas where you're weak because you know that'll be the thing that sinks you. And you can acknowledge all the areas in which you're strong. And I think no more so is that on display than when we talk about the offense. Because when we talk about the offense, we always start by saying, and I always start by saying, if you look at the efficiency numbers and the success rate and all these things that add up to how you score points, you see a lot of pluses. You see a lot of big plays, explosive plays. You see consistency in scoring. When we talk about a scoring offense, if we're going to go traditional stats, they're one of the elite scoring offenses in the country. You see all these things. And then you see these chasms within it where you go, man, it's weird that they're able to do all these things despite being bogged down by the inefficiency of first down or success in the run game traditionally, which they don't have a ton of, not consistently, drive for drive. So it's just a weird conversation, and
it's like an offense that if you make it akin to Major League Baseball, you'd be 22nd in average and on base percentage, but then you're 3rd in home runs. You're relying on the long ball to live and die.
Yeah, and you can win. I mean, we've seen teams win that way, right? We've seen you can go to the World Series doing that. I mean, it happens, right? It's just that there's going to come a time where you're going to have to string some hits together and get some walks and get on base, and so you worry about that aspect of it. I think what's interesting is, and we talked about this yesterday on Seminole Headlines, and I see it every time we do the JCS. I see it right now, for example, Briley in the chat and others. It's funny, if you bring up anything negative about the team, people get pissed like you're being overly negative, and that's really just childish. And at the same time, if you were to point out and only point out all the great things, well, that's naive. So I think you have to have a balanced discussion.
I agree.
And you can certainly do so all the while acknowledging how awesome it is to be 7-0. And I think everybody that covers this team has done that.
Yeah, no, it's a simple thing. Like, if you want only good news, Florida State Sports Information will do that for you. That's exactly where you want to go in that situation. But like, it's the opportunity here. I think we'd enjoy this more. Like, we'd be sounding more positive if, let's say, that Georgia or Alabama was like this other thing that is going to be an impenetrable force, unstoppable, clearing away, national championship favorite, and then we're in the discussion for like number 2, 3, 4, and 5. Because then you're like, oh, there's this Goliath out there. I can't believe how far we've come. Look at this. We're going to get a chance to maybe upset them in the playoff. You'd approach it more positively. But to me, because everybody is so mediocre,
because you could win it all. Yeah.
It's like, come on, guys. Holy cow. You picked a hell of a time to have a hand because nobody else in the table does. They don't know it. And then there's a big pot in the middle of it. Like, holy crap, this is a humongous opportunity. It reminds me of 2012 in a way. In retrospect, we knew about 2012. We didn't really know it as we were going through it. But that Notre Dame team in the BCS title game was going to lose to any of the other top 8 teams in the country.
And they most certainly were going to lose to Alabama.
They would have lost to us that year. We would have smoked that ass if we could have bothered to not lose on the road at NC State or turn it over 5 times against Florida. Hell, if Florida didn't slip up that season and they had made it, and we were worried about that for a minute.
We were.
If they had made it to the national title game in 2012, they would have beaten the brakes off of Notre Dame. So it's like, man, and Georgia obviously knows that in the SEC championship where they had the drop pass on the final drive. That was one of the classic SEC title games. Or not dropped. He catches it in bounds and the clock runs out. That was Mark Richt's Georgia team. If Georgia had gone and played Notre Dame, it's like, oh my God, there's just this golden opportunity. And I think that's where the urgency comes from at least me. I know that's where it comes from is, boy, you picked a good year to have a lot of 22 and 23-year-olds here and a huge retention segment of your roster.
I want to answer your question in a second, Patrick, but to further expound on this, I think I oddly, you notice I will talk about the lack of depth at linebacker, and I've brought this up a lot, but I've brought it up a lot less in season because I feel like that's a kind of thing, as long as your 2 starters stay healthy, you could probably overcome to some extent. Whereas I feel like the reason I get so concerned about the juggling and the lack of health on the offensive line is I think that will cost you way more than having a lack of depth at linebacker or not being elite at linebacker. Yeah. I think we're okay at linebacker. We're not great, but I think those 2 guys are good enough and you can win. But I feel like you will see this come back to haunt you if you can't get healthy on the offensive line. That's the frustrating part for me is they just haven't been healthy, and that is problematic. And that's for any team, but that happens to be the thing that, plagues us a little bit right now.
Oh, that's 13 was lucky in that regard.
Yeah, they never got hurt. They never got hurt.
You didn't have much in reserve, but you never had to really tap into that reserve.
Well, and the thing about 13 is your starting 5 were better than this starting 5. So the fact that they stayed healthy and they were really, really good. So you had a nice combination there.
Oh, totally. No, I agree 100%. And it's like I'm tickled that they're in this position. Like one of the moments, here you go, Briley, if you want a positive moment, is it's in the second half of the game. It's 20-17 on Saturday. And you're thinking about the avalanche of things that happen to you in order for Duke to be in this position, even when they go and have the ball. And they're going for it on 4th and 3. I'm like, man, if we stop this, they're losing. They've got no chance. Like, this is it. The game hinges here, and they might not even win it if they score a touchdown here.
Right. But they had to score a touchdown there to have a chance.
But they have to, and that speaks to all of the crap that went wrong for the better part of 3 quarters. You're taking their best shot because you're Florida State in your top 5. And I still feel like, you don't have enough for us, especially if you don't get this touchdown right here, right now. And that's how far we've come in such a short period of time. Like, I reflect on that in the moment saying, that's a loaded house for FSU and Duke on a Saturday night, coming off of sellouts against Syracuse and Virginia Tech, who don't draw on their own, folks, but you're there in droves for a noon kick and a 3:30 to sell it out. Like, and you're taking these teams' best shots and you're still multiple scores better. Like, yeah, that's really cool. And I don't get tired of that at all.
Patrick writes, well, Briley, hold on. That's called me giving an opinion. My opinion is we're not going to win the national championship, and we won't rue the day because we didn't win the national championship. Don't take that out of context. I'd say we'd rue the day that this line didn't live up to as good as we thought they could be. And mixed into that, by the way, is health concerns, which I've also noted repeatedly, that they have not been healthy as part of this. So
I'd also argue the show isn't always informative. It's conversational. So, I mean, if it was just an informative show, then we'd be reading stats for 2 hours. Or
Yeah, and that's also I'm paid.
But that's with love. That's said with love, Briley, because most of the comments.
Yeah, we're not here. I give an opinion, so that's what's going to happen. Which game concerns you the most, Miami or Florida? Hopefully, this doesn't come across as negative, but Miami concerns me the most. I'm worried about Miami because of the offensive defensive lines. And offense and defensive lines, which is again common topic, is an area that if you lose that battle, you can lose the game. I don't think we will. I don't think we're going to lose the game. I think that we're too good. We're good enough to kind of neutralize that advantage that they have on the offensive and defensive lines. And our quarterback is special, especially when they know they need him to be. So I don't think they're going to go into that game under any illusions that he knows he's going to have to run the football and they're going to have to call it that way. And then I just think we could really take advantage of their corners. I don't think Miami's elite at corner. And I think we are very, very good at wide receiver. And Jordan can buy time and he'll make some big plays. But you're going to have to bring your lunch pail. That's going to be a hard-hitting game. We'll see what Miami does before they get here. My sense is they're going to be in that mode we would be in if we were the lesser team, which is, hey, you know what? We're good enough to ruin your season. We're good enough to give you a problem and make you scared for a little while there. And can we get it in the second half and get you thinking? Because you've got a lot more to lose than we do. And I kind of think that is something that'll be their mindset because they can't do what we can do. They're not in a position that we're in. We're in the position to go and win the ACC. We're in the position to go into the college football playoff. Not them, but they are talented enough up front to cause consternation.
Yeah, Miami's more concerning, but I like that it's at home. That makes a difference.
Well, very much so. Now, yeah, if you show up against Florida and really, I don't know how you couldn't. You that atmosphere is electric. They will be, obviously bloodthirsty as well because they hate us. Yeah. And they'll have our attention. Good Lord, the game was played here last year, and we thought that, for the most part, Florida State was in a prime position to win that game going away, given all the injuries that Florida had and some of the problems coming into the game. And they were down to like one prolific receiver, and he's remained prolific, I might add. But damn it, man. We struggled to stop him.
So they had one receiver. At least you feel a little bit better. It's still not good. It's not like that performance where they had one receiver last year was good. But you feel a little bit better because Pearsall's been doing that this whole year. So
he's really good. He's going to play in the league.
So here's a question from Dustin that gets a little bit at the critical part, but I think this is it. I'll make an interesting question off. I'll spin one off of it. Dustin says you have no faith. I know we haven't been at peak efficiency just yet.
Yeah,
but I think we got a chance to win it all. Okay. Does Florida State have to get?
By the way,
huh?
Just for everybody to know, I didn't say we didn't have a chance.
Does Florida State have to get to maxed efficiency in order to win a national title? I don't think they have to.
It depends on who they play, but yeah, I don't think they have to either. There's no super juggernaut out there this year, like you've pointed out. Like if you were playing that Georgia team from 2 years ago, yep, you better be as good as you could possibly be, or you're going to get blown out. No, there's not one of those teams where you're like, whoo.
Yeah, like this team could not arrive in a sense and play 4 quarters of dominant football as we see the definition,
right,
and still win it all. I think they could do that. Whereas some others in the past, like that 15 team that had an exceptional defense and it had Dalvin Cook, they needed to hit on everything, and a lot of those marginal coin flip things needed to go their way for them to make it to the playoff, which of course they didn't. They lost to Georgia Tech, and then they lost to Clemson that year. They went 10-2. But that team needed more help than this team does to do all those things. Brian, do we only run that Daniels guy when Fowler is calling the play-by-play? Did you hear that on Saturday? Chris lost his mind. He called Jordan Travis Daniels for maybe four out of 5 plays.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, he did.
I don't think I even noticed that.
And Kirk was trying to help me. He's like, what a run by Jordan Travis. And then the next play, Daniels drops back. And I'm sure Kirk's like, Jesus, guy.
Well, and that is really weird, too. And they called our game against LSU, and he got to see them pitted together. So come on now.
Nobody got to him to tell him that spawn is span. in 6 weeks.
You know what? What's weird is if you go back, I did hear him once call him Span and then go back to calling him Spawn. So somebody must have corrected him at least once, and then he somehow turned it back around.
Garrett says he's got a question. Thank you for the birthday wish. Very much, Garrett. What was your favorite birthday and why? And keep it PG-13.
Oh, man. Oh, God. I don't know. So, Tom, it's your birthday.
I got one.
Yeah, give me your first. Yeah, give me your favorite birthday.
The first one that comes to mind, I mean, there are a lot of good ones if you're lucky enough to have a family like I do.
Yep.
But when I was 10, my 10th birthday was the first big party that I could throw it at the house. Like it was like you could have everybody over, anybody you want come over. So we had a small elementary school class of about 32 to 35 given the year, which means you split it down the middle or about 16 boys. And I had a couple friends from before that weren't in the school anymore. So about 20 came over. 20 of my friends came over. And we had a good sized field in the back of the house that we played football on for 2 or 3 hours. And I got the exact food that I wanted to get, all the different sodas and all the different treats and stuff. But my family, I think it was my sister and I, went to the store because my parents wouldn't let us play tackle. They didn't want bleeding kids all over the place. And we found some football bed sheets that we cut up into flags beforehand. And for some reason, more than even playing the football, I just remember being so hyped that my friends were on their way over and we were cutting these sheets into long strips of footballs for the blue team and the white team so that we could divvy up the teams properly. And yeah, I just remember cutting the football sheets. That was just a great memory.
So I was trying to, while you were saying that, because I had a similar and fun birthday where all my friends came over and we played wiffle ball in the backyard. And it was the same thing, like all my elementary school friends. But I was trying to figure out the year that it was, because that same year is we did like a 2-part birthday. So I'd say it was a whole weekend. On the Sunday was the day that we went to Adventure Island. And I've told that story where McEnroe lost to Lindell in the French Open. And I remember the day before we had a pool party and we played, wiffle ball and football and all the ball and all the things you could do with your friends. And I got cool gifts and all that stuff. But then I was trying to think, was that the same one? And it was. And I remembered McEnroe losing to Lindell and Roland Garros. And that was when I was 13. So I was 13 years old. That was a
13.
good sad that he lost, but it was a good birthday. And Adventure Island is still fun. When was the last time you went to Adventure Island?
I never went. I'd never been.
Well, buddy, good God. What are we doing?
I went to Busch Gardens. I went to
Yeah.
we went to Orlando all the time. My parents had the Disney passes.
Butler of Eric wrote, Jeff, how about the Lakewood High School Deuce Span showing up at the Duke game? Oh, yeah, buddy. Believe me. Yeah, no, it's there.
Brett says, how about Florida State versus Virginia Tech in Charlotte? Just kidding, but wouldn't it be a hoot?
I'd love for that to happen. There'd be nothing negative to talk about with that. My goodness.
I present you Virginia Tech's remaining schedule with that in mind. So there you go. They're playing tomorrow night, so you actually have a Thursday night football game in the ACC. Used to be every week you would get one of those. They host Syracuse.
Must win for Virginia Tech tomorrow night.
They all are. And then they go to Louisville, but then they got BC, NC State, and Virginia.
You can't just gloss over, but then they got the road game against Louisville. We're calling it a day. We're done talking about this.
Maybe. If Pitt's good enough to run away from Louisville, then maybe Virginia Tech is.
Lord. No, we're not playing Virginia Tech.
All right. Let's see. There were other questions, and I scrolled up. Hog Watcher wants to know, and you've seen this guy too. Any insider keen eye in the trenches during practice you can say about Andre Otto? Is he even getting any reps? You want to go ahead with that first?
We both like him. We both like Otto an awful lot, and we think he's going to be a very good player. I think that's the best way to sum it up. He's good when he gets reps. He's good.
Yeah, everybody gets reps.
Yep.
I would say that he projects very nicely, but it's probably too soon. But
it is way too soon, but he does project very nicely. You and I agreed on that right off the bat. The first time we saw him.
He's quick. He's just he stays square. He's got quick movements. I don't know where he's going to play. He's large enough that they could kind of try him out everywhere if he continues to develop. But good player. That looks like a hit all the way.
Yep, they got one there. Yeah.
Kevin, thank you for the contribution. Any
Hey,
idea for
fellas,
Noles?
love all you do. Any ideas for Knowles heading to Winston-Salem? Any good gathering spots? Seems like a sleepy town. Happy birthday, Tom.
Thank you.
Kevin, Winston-Salem's fine, and there are always places in these college towns that are fun. Admittedly, this is one of the college towns that I am not an expert on in terms of places to go eat or bars to hang out and watch other games or whatever it is you're looking to do. But I know it's a college town, so I can promise you there will be plenty. And somebody might answer you here in the chat, even. So I'm glad we can kind of group this together. But that's not a place that I've ever really hung out
Yep.
in all the years of covering Florida State.
So I just looked up steakhouses in Winston-Salem just to see if a name jumped out to me. You know how we do this with like football player names?
Yeah.
Like Derwin James, the moment that we saw him as a recruit, like without seeing his film, you're like, that's a name.
Oh, yeah. Great name. Yeah.
How about this? Firebirds Wood-Fired Grill.
Sounds
Firebirds.
great.
Firebird sounds like it's good. So go to
Sounds
Fire.
like a good place. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure right now there's somebody who's from that area going, no, guys, you got to tell them to go. Yeah, if you know, tell us in the chat.
Thank you to Mike for the birthday wish. Very much. Positive vibes. Feeling them. I'm feeling the vibes. Trey also, for your birthday, the Noles should drop a 60 burger on Wake. So there we go. Percentage chance Florida State does exactly what you wished of Florida State to do all offseason and really make this uncomfortable.
Note that it's his wife's birthday, too.
Happy birthday, Trey's wife. What's your wife's name, Trey? Let me see if I can wish her a birthday by her proper first name.
Yeah, there you go. Chance we score 60. Oh, buddy, wouldn't that be high times? I have been waiting for that for some time. I want to smash Wake Forest back into their hole. I'm done with them. Although I hated that Clausen was so awesome today when talking about Florida State. He could not have been more, gracious in terms of like, it almost like he was this close to saying it's an honor to play Florida State.
He went for 7 to 8 minutes in his open when he transitioned from the recap to Florida State, straight on how great Mike Norvell is. Actually, how great the sponsor of this show is, the Battle's End. He was talking about how their collective is among the best in the country because they spend their money properly.
Well, and we talked about this the other day, and even today, some on the show. Oh, by the way, there you go.
Happy birthday, Robin. Happy birthday. Hope you're 29 again.
Happy birthday, Robin. I've wanted to beat them senseless, but I do respect Dave Clausen. I will say that right off the bat. He has put together a program that you gotta be smart, you gotta be buttoned up, you gotta play well to beat. Mm-hmm. And there are going to be pockets of time for any coach when they're at Wake Forest where they just don't have enough guys. They graduate out or whatever it might be. Maybe you've got a plus player at quarterback that gets the system and then he moves on and you got to start fresh. Yep. That's how it is at Wake Forest. You're not able to sustain excellence for long periods of time. Like you might have 2 or 3 years where you really play at a high level, and then there'll be this season that the rest of us will forget happened and you won 4 games, followed by maybe another good season or 2, and then you kind of start over. That's the inconsistency that you are destined to have at a smaller school like that, where you cannot sustain high levels of recruiting.
And and it's not like they have the enrollment to go collective strong.
Now back to. Sorry, you made the point there, and I wanted to say that we circled back today talking about the collective, and I think that one of the best things that the Battle's End has done is they are thorough. And I think that it's where you get in trouble is this idea that you're just an agent of, money disbursement, where you just kind of, okay, well, we have this much money and this guy is worth this many millions of dollars. And he's decided that he'd like his team and his school not to suck anymore. And he's willing to throw a lot of those dollars at these kids because these are the kids that people have come to him and said are really fast and really big and strong and we'll win with them. That's not a plan, man. That's not a plan. That's a one-time disbursement of money that may catch you some really good players and you may temporarily win, but it's not sustainable because he's not going to keep writing those checks if there's not sustainability. And you've got to have a plan in place that's thorough, that parents will gravitate towards as well, because not all these kids are just walking around with their hand out. They want to know how, what options do I have? How can you help me grow on and off the field. What else is there besides the fact that you're going to give me, and I'm making up sums here, guys, but so you're going to give me $30,000 or you're going to give me $80,000. Great. What else can I expect once I get there? Is there any other avenues by which I could grow besides just, I can get a new car or I can take a girl out on a date because I have some pizza money? No, I mean, like, you got to have a plan in place. And I think that's really what the Battle's End has done better than everybody else so far, which is that they are very thorough because they understood that. And they didn't want this to be a joke.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you look at all the different places that if you're a Florida State fan, you can support. And like, I'm a coaches club member on the side, not for football, because football gets plenty of, but look at the Battle's End. This is one way to do it, the boosters. But, the thing with the Battle's End and where Dave Clawson was going, and I agree, is he said, number one, the evaluation, which is code for there's good communication between the channels that need to talk.
That's
about,
correct.
The players that are necessary. And then retention. Retention is another big one. He was very impressed with how you get Jordan Travis to come back. You get Jared Verse to come back. Like, these are the keys. It's not always about going and getting the newest object that's in the portal. It can be that the solution is here if he just bothered to stick around for another year. And you could look to one of our rivals in the conference for that. Part of Clemson's sustained success in the college football playoff era was that nobody ever left. Yeah. And that's before the NIL era, but I'm pretty sure there was a little NIL going on there to make sure that a lot of those defensive linemen specifically stuck around for another year. So that's a big function of it.
Does another NCAA team or NFL team attempt to take Norvell after this year? You never know. I mean, I would think that you're always going to be concerned when your coach is as young as Mike Norvell. When you're having this kind of success, and let's say Florida State goes to the college football playoff, it's not lost on anybody how quickly Mike turned this mess into something this good. And so people can watch and say, they got eyes just like all of us. This guy is energetic, seems to have figured it out with the locker room, is a hard worker, seems to be anchored by the right things, right? He talks about service. He talks about sacrifice. He talks a lot about, being there for the guy next to you, and so he can get people to buy in and pull in the same direction. And, oh, by the way, from an X's and O standpoint, we all know Mike Norvell's calling plays. We all know this is Mike Norvell's offense. Now, Alex Atkins has a big part, and they sit down together and talk it through during the week, but this is Mike's offense. And I think other people understand that too. So he's got a lot of things going for him. He's young. He's hungry. He's about the right things. He's hardworking. He's smart from an X's and O standpoint. Yeah, that is a recipe for people to come calling. I don't know that an NFL team is going to come calling right now. Mike's offense is very much a college offense, but I will tell you that those offenses have infiltrated the NFL. And you see a lot of coaches that you would never have been a candidate to make it to the league these days, or run offenses that would have never been a candidate to work in the NFL that now do. And so that's changing as well. And that's changed a lot. So I guess I wouldn't count it out, but I think Mike is happy. To get to the larger question, I think he's happy here. He's going to push, as all coaches do, for more. He's going to want better facilities. He's going to want more things. All coaches do. They want everything they could possibly need to compete at the highest level in order to win a national championship. And they really wouldn't be doing their job if they didn't push for that. Where we get angry at people is when they're not also appreciative of the things that they do have. And so where I think Mike strikes a great balance is that, yeah, he's going to want this and he's going to want that and he's going to want more money for this. And when are we getting started on this football-only facility and all that stuff? But Mike, it's not lost on Mike how great that was Saturday night, how awesome those fans are, and how passionate this place is, and how you can win a national championship here, and how it's a special place. I think he's real when he believes that this is one of those special places. Florida State's not the only special place, but it's one of about, I don't know, what would you say, 25 to 35 places where if everybody is operating at peak efficiency, you got a shot. You could win the whole thing. And you can't really do that at a lot of places. And
I think that list is, I think that list is smaller than 25 or 30. I think it's maybe 15 to 20 in this day and age where money
it used to be bigger, right? Yeah. If you're going to exclude the Nebraskas of the world now and say they can't, then yeah, maybe I agree with you there. But I still include them in there.
No, I would like, actually, I would probably they would make the cut in the 15 or 20. It just feels like you have to pay to play a little bit more now, in so many different ways. But not everybody in the SEC or the Big Ten, or even when they expand their footprint a little bit, and we'll get to that question in a second. Vandy's not going to do that. Rutgers isn't going to do that. Not Wake. I'm trying to think of another example. Indiana's not going to do that in football. You know what I mean? But you're going to have to be part of that Power 2 in the near term here in order to be able to do what you're talking about. You can make the playoff if you're not in the Power 2.
Yeah.
I don't know about winning a national championship in the near future, which takes us to Zyler's question, which is, have there been any conference change rumors or info? I expect no, given in season. Not really, but an interesting quote from Jim Phillips today at the ACC basketball tip-off, where he says, I cannot control individual decisions on campuses. That's an interesting quote. Getting to 18 protects the ACC now and into the future. That does sound like a gentleman who is resigned to there being a departure, right? I mean, to me, that got lost in the shuffle today. I see there are 12 retweets on this guy Brendan's account, but that's interesting language for the commissioner to use personally.
Well, he's aware of Clemson hiring an outside firm to come in and take a look at their alignment and whether or not they're in the right place, right? This is the guy that they brought in who helped suggest to the Big 12 the teams that they needed to bring in to solidify themselves, amongst others. So if you've got member institutions that are bringing in outside resources to analyze whether or not they're in the right place, almost by definition, you understand people are looking. You've had one who's openly called out the situation as being untenable, and that'd be this school. Yep. And then you've had others say, yeah, we agree with them. And then now you've got another that's saying, yeah, not only do we agree with them, but we're going to bring some people in here and we're going to have them sit us down and talk about what we need to do. So, that's not exactly stable.
No, and this to me is a quote of somebody who knows that it's a matter of when, not if, teams are leaving. That's what the 18 quote is about. Protects the ACC now. They're leaving. And we are leaving. It's just a matter of when. No new information specifically, though. A nice football pun from FDFC, who says, without A.T. Perry and Sam Hartman, Wake's offense will be an absolute mesh.
I saw that earlier, and it made me smile. Yes, well done. Well done, FDFC.
Hi Jenks wants to wish me happy birthday, which is great. Thank you very much, Hi Jenks. But then also talk about the officiating that Duke got screwed on, which was the fourth down, the official standing over the ball when they did not substitute. I don't know if that's true that they did not substitute. They never rolled the tape, but I'm assuming they didn't, the way that Elko was losing his mind.
They didn't, Tom. They screwed him. That's all there is to it. They absolutely screwed him. They're not used to seeing it. And he deked us. He got us. He was gonna snap the ball while we're running dudes in and out because he didn't sub. And it was a smart play. And he's a smart coach. And that's what smart coaches do. Every now and then they got you.
And we got got.
We got got. He got us.
And that's running around like this.
Oh yeah, no. He got us. That's what are you gonna do? He got screwed. It happens.
Maybe you can speak to this generally with your access that you had when you were calling games in the spring. But he says Mike's play sheet looks like it has maybe 10 plays on it, not some large color-coded matrix. Without breaking trust, what could you comment on that?
He's got a lot more than that, but just for giggles, there you go. There.
Oh, really? Boy, that was not scripted.
No, I still got all my play sheets. And they only gave us about I don't know, maybe a third. Here's what I'll tell you. I sat in the game planning office by his office, and they've got, obviously one might expect an area where you could have a projector, but they also have all these whiteboards and
the layered ones.
Yeah. And it was really cool. He just so that we could experience the whole thing, kind of showed what it's like when they're in their meetings and they're game planning for a specific opponent. And he said, I'll over here, this is going to be 1st and 10. And this will be obviously as varied as anything that we have. But over here, we're talking about 2nd and 6 or less. Mm-hmm. We're talking about 3rd and 5 or more, 3rd and 5 or less. And then over here, we're talking about 4th and 2 or 4th, and it's everywhere. And it was so cool. And he's like, we're going to go through all these plays and we're going to eliminate the ones we don't like for this matchup. And so this is why they work 18-hour days, because you're gonna have to sit down and he's gonna have to say to you, all right, look, given their personnel, given their strengths this year, I don't think we need this, and this. What do you think? And Alex can say, well, I like a variation of that one that you just erased, so let's do this and this instead. And this is how you come to an agreement on the plays that are going to be on the actual sheet that day. Doesn't mean you can't go off script. It doesn't mean you can't say, hey, you know what? They've changed it up. Let's go back to this, because it's all on the table. It's all within your offense. But on a given day, they game plan for that game, and they've eliminated a lot of plays to focus on the areas where they think they can exploit a weakness. It's really cool, guys, and it was one of the great experiences that I've had. I've experienced some of that before, but never to that extent, and certainly not with Florida State, and that was really neat.
I wonder, and I'd love to be a fly on the wall for when they get down to the plays they're eliminating, and they're arguing like their life depends on it. That play should be
a single play.
It's kind of like if you're doing a wedding, and it's like the acquaintances that are at the final table, and you've got like 12 people, and there are 8 seats. It's like, who's going to make the cut, and who's going to be the first alternate? Like, I would imagine there would have to be, over the course of a 12-game season, some knockdown dragouts about things that should make the list and things that don't make the list.
I think what happens, especially when you end up, when you have a guy that you really respect, it wouldn't be any different than you and I arguing about something, for example. I mean, we both love and trust each other and respect each other's intellect. So you would say, well, now hold on. Here's why I think it should be this. And I'd be like, well, here's why I don't want to do it. And we'd go back and forth and we'd see who had the most compelling argument. And if we were still at a stalemate, ultimately the head coach is going to say, well, we're not doing it and we're done. We're moving on now. I can't sit here all night with you. This is what we're doing, because he's the head coach. And that is the benefit of, being the head coach. We're done. At that point, when you reach that place, the other guy has to stand down. This is where the argument ends. Like, we've entertained everything. You've shown things on merit. I've shown things on merit. We're at a standstill, and I've decided we're not running. And that's how
why? Because I have decided it.
Yes, and that's the kind of this is how it works.
Pete's thank you for the birthday wish. He says he wants to know if you enjoy the Fear the Spear turntable. Pete, I'm going to own that one. It's in my car. I still need to give it to Jeff. It's a gift that Pete sent for all of us. It's in the car. I told you about it at Corner Pocket, because that's when Gene gave me the box
right now. I'm excited to get the Fear the Spear turntable. Very excited, Pete. One of these days.
FSU 223. FSU Stu, excuse me, very much Stu. I like the Ace Ventura there. Thank you for the birthday wish. So with Klubnik going off script and given DJU's success at Oregon State, is it possible that Cade is going rogue because of a lack of faith in the coaches, their calls, and their offense?
Well, it's a different offensive coordinator that's coaching Cade Klubnik right now than was coaching DJU. So they made a change at that position. I can't get to the bottom of what the hell is going on there with Cade. I think it's a really strange set of circumstances. You get into rumorville here. I've had some people say that kid is, he's difficult. He can be difficult. I think he's a lot like any number of other 5-star kids. It's a bit of a prima donna to some degree, and
yeah, well, if you go rogue in a situation like that and you're difficult, that makes it a hell of a lot easier to tell you to pound sand. I mean, I know they can't right now in the middle of the season, but if I'm Dabo, I might consider the transfer portal finally for the first time in my life. If I can't trust you to hand the ball off when I say hand the effing ball off or we lose, Jesus, that's
yeah. It's just, I'm calling a play here, man. You're not a 5th-year senior that has seen this offense backwards and forwards and earned the level of trust that would allow you to audible in a situation like this. There are quarterbacks who do, and there are quarterbacks who get the play call and might be so elite, and they've proven it time and again that they could say, you know what, F that. Here's what we're doing. But it's few and far between, by the way. It's very few and far between.
Consider the absurdity of this circumstance, though, because it's your final play. You need a score plus a 2-point conversion. It's Will Shipley behind you, not some bum.
No,
and,
right.
Earlier this season, also in overtime, you were not supposed to have an option because they thought you were smart enough to hand the ball off, and you threw it, and you were admonished for that. So now you're in a similar situation where it's not perfectly similar, but they're saying you cannot do anything but hand off the ball. So you've already been in that meeting and yelled at for this issue.
No, the whole thing is bizarre, and I love it. It speaks to disarray, and it speaks to problems behind the scenes, and I hope we see more of it. Panama Jack, thank you for wishing me and telling me that it was a great interview on SiriusXM the other day.
Who are you with?
EJ Manuel and the former LSU running back.
Oh, you did it. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Starts with an H. Hester. Jacob Hester.
Jacob Hester, yeah. That's who I was with.
Grillmaster says, speaking of play calls, hey, how do you like EJ on the air? Is he good?
I think he's really good on television. I think he does a really good job on television. I think he's, as somebody who did SiriusXM for a lot of years, I can tell you that's a clunky format.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be difficult because you're not in the same studio as your other host, and you're generally not looking at the people you're interviewing. And so there's a delay, satellite. It's just a weird deal. And I think he's still learning to deal with that. If I were going to be critical, it's not awful, but I think he's still learning how to deal with that because he's not a classic show host. So when you have to play the role of host instead of analyst sometimes, or co-host, that can be weird to try to keep it moving. But I will tell you that, I like EJ's personality, and I think he's great on television, and I enjoy talking to him whenever they have me on.
It's one of the hard parts of even doing things like this is you kind of, because if you both talk at the same time with this technology, it's garbled nonsense. Yeah,
EJ's really good on television, though. He's got, first of all, he's a really good-looking guy. He dresses to the nines. He played the game. He understands it inside and out, and he's good at giving those opinions. So I think he's only going to get better the more he does it.
Last question or two. He was always great on Monday press conferences. You knew he had a shot if he wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Speaking of play calls, do you think there's a potential playoff contender that's about to be eliminated by their conference overlords for calling plays in advance and cheating?
Michigan? No, I don't think they'll be eliminated.
Yeah, you don't think they'll be suspended in time or anything like that?
No, I think that they'll conveniently let it play out in such a way that it leads into the off season or something, unless there's just such an ugly smoking gun. Although there appears to be some things to it that are not good, not good.
Yeah, you could see why it was brought to the attention of the league. Somebody snitched because at some point, like they might have worn it for 4 or 5 games, and the coach is like, "All right, I see what you're doing, you clown stallion, or this freaking guy." But if you're going on 3 years and potentially, do you see Andy Staples tweet about this today?
I didn't see it today, no.
So there was a message board poster for the Tennessee side, I think our Tennessee side, VolQuest and On3, that alerted back in December and January that he knew through a contact there was a Michigan guy who would be coming to a Tennessee game to steal their signs. But once Tennessee lost to South Carolina, that dude called the trip off. But he had like kind of the details of how he was going to go about doing it. Then lo and behold, 9 months after this guy's last post about the Michigan guy who was going to come and steal our signs, there he is. So sometimes message board posters are telling you the perfect truth.
That's funny. That is funny. Hey, go enjoy your birthday at 6:00, man. You did it. Go and spend some time with your wife and enjoy your birthday. And I love you, buddy, and so does everybody here. So go have a good evening, and we'll wrap it up here. By the way, thanks to all of you guys that were on here, and we appreciate the comments and the time spent with us. It's always fun. We'll do it again next Wednesday. And don't forget, tomorrow, another JCS. I don't know. I think wake up tomorrow, probably.
Wake up tomorrow at 6, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's right. So, yeah, a lot in the way of content coming your way as well. So be good, everybody. Enjoy your evening. Peace. Happy birthday, Tom.